Hi there, this is Jim Reavis, CEO of Cloud Security Alliance, and welcome to what may be one of the most important of our virtual event series in 2026, our Agentic AI Summit, our Agentic Wild Kingdom. So I'm very excited personally because of all the focus I have had on this individual research that I've been doing and just so much engagement with the community on where the industry is going right now. We're very exciting times, and I'm using this welcome here to talk about the event a little bit, but also talk a little bit about a presentation we just teased out a little bit at the RSA conference back in March. And at our summit, we were letting people know about something that we're very excited about. And that is the fact that we now have two organizations. So Cloud Security Alliance, we are focused on just defining modern cybersecurity, and we're continuing to be very enthusiastic and forward thinking about that. So that includes cloud, and it does include AI, it includes zero trust, quantum computing, ITOT. There's so many areas where we have a lot of work to do to modernize cybersecurity. And also to complement that, we have a new organization, the CSAI Foundation, which is an artificial intelligence pure play organization to really help us garner the right resources, have the right partnerships and relationships. And as I go through this, you'll see it's already starting to bear fruit in what we've been able to do. So our 2026 strategic mission, and I've talked about this before, securing the agentic control plane. Well, I think what you're going to find is that we just have a lot more substance around that and a lot clearer plans and a lot of things to talk about and what we've been able to accomplish. So really, if you want to keep track, we're still sort of a work in progress online in getting all of our different research projects and different corporate websites all in a real sort of coherent and seamless presentation to you. But you always know you can go to cloudsecurityalliance.org. You can also now go to csai.foundation, and you can see even there's a link to join the journey here. So we'll continue to make that better for you, but just as a little tip there, be aware of that, and this presentation will be made available to you. So kind of review, going back, we're 17 years old at Cloud Security Alliance, and we have a broad footprint that is a terrific execution machine. We have like so many individual members, we have chapters all around the world, a lot of research artifacts, so many people have adhered to our best practices, and a lot of volunteer researchers that make this happen. So it's been pretty successful. And in fact, our original AI work, we've been calling this the AI Safety Initiative inside of Cloud Security Alliance. And we've already done a lot of things, like over 30 unique research artifacts that sort of cover technical governance, so many different areas in AI and agentic AI. We've made progress with our Star for AI, that is out, organizational certification. We have our individual certification, and we have a lot of interesting projects like telemetry tools and open source and different things we're doing. And Risk Rubric is an example of that. So we've made a lot of progress, but as I'm going to talk about in the next slide, we are seeing so much work and so much need to actually make a lot more progress, and enterprises are seeking to transform themselves. Some of them are very excited about this, some are being pushed, some are being pulled, but we all need to work together on this. And so we found that the CSA Foundation, a 501c3 organization, allows us to accelerate this mission. So what I want to do is to talk about what I've been calling two exponentials, two things that are happening at the same time that are creating pressure points that we have just simply never seen before. So the models are very, very noticeably improving, and what you call this step level improvement, where there has been this sort of theory that the models every 6 months, you should think it's going to get better and better. And we're seeing it change, where we're seeing progress on a month-to-month basis. It's just incredible. And obviously, and I'll talk about this more as of this conference's live publication, its Mythos from Anthropic has gotten a lot of that attention. It's considered to be so powerful that maybe it's dangerous from a cybersecurity perspective. So we're all going to see about that. But what you have certainly observed is that every time one of the frontier labs introduces a new model, it sort of has a little bit of a leapfrog against the others. And so we're just going to continue to see that happen, I think. So that creates a lot of challenges, as the great new capability which can solve business problems is also causing a lot of concerns in cybersecurity. It's probably the number one concern that we have with models right now. The second exponential, and you really need to think about these things in sort of a harmonized fashion, is this viral adoption of agents. So OpenClaw, you would have to say, was the chat GPT moment for agents. So we've been talking about agents and agentic, but it's been perhaps more of a structured, tailored enterprise top-down approach to we're going to create certain types of agents for our organization. And the agentic capabilities that we've seen for the most part have been things that have been sort of an inherent part or a feature function of the major frontier models desktop applications like ChatGPT, Claude, things like that. So, but it's really changed. And OpenClaw, this open source project, the fastest growing open source project of all time, that really was a game changer where everyone, it seems, has been working to create agents and do a lot of new things. And it's not just limited to them. There's just so many things you're seeing again with what OpenAI is bringing, and so many people are using Codex coding agents, and Claude Code is something that's used quite a bit. And that's even myself personally, having a computer science degree that I got 39 years ago, I've actually found that it's been very empowering for me to sort of unlock the business knowledge I have by using these agents to build things. And so the interesting thing about this from a CISO perspective is that it's a real challenge to deal with one of these exponentials, and we're using a model and all the changes to it and those capabilities. How do I manage that and manage the risks for the organization and optimize our capabilities? And so that's coming out from one side, and it's like, maybe how are the hackers going to be able to use these tools to better attack me? At the same time we're dealing with that, we're also dealing with all of the demand and even sort of bring your own agent inside the organization. And so now we got to deal with all of those activities and that very viral use of the agents, which, and they're going back and they're talking to these very advanced models. So those two exponentials in growth feed very much on each other and create like a very complex environment and a lot of opportunities, a lot of empowerment, but it's also very complex. And the question is, do you have a strategy for dealing with both of these exponentials at the same time? That's the key thing that I think about. So for Cloud Security Alliance to be working through this, to be dealing with this, we have defined within our CSAI Foundation 6 strategic programs. And I'm going to go walk through all 6 of them a little bit. Our risk observatory, the overall best practices, what we're thinking about in education credentialing, what we're thinking about in the CXO trust resources, overall global assurance and trust, and then really trying to step out and think about what we're doing in the future. These are the areas that we really want to like help create great progress. And we think by doing this, it's really going to help cybersecurity. And it's really in a lot of degrees, what we're talking about is 12 months from now, cybersecurity is going to look a lot different. And if you don't believe me, and it's okay, great to be skeptical, think about what software development looked like 12 months ago and what it looks like now. I truly believe we are going to see changes on that magnitude. So let's jump into some of these areas. So the risk observatory, and we've sort of talked about this before, and I'm pleased to say that we are now a CNA, that's a CVE numbering authority through MITRE. And right now the scope is sort of a traditional scope in managing vulnerabilities in our increasingly large repository of software tools that we're developing. But we are, as part of this, convening our own group of CVEs to do research in how we best think about CVEs in the agentic AI context, and also collaborating with the different working groups that the CV program officially stands up. So we think through that, we're gonna be careful. There's a lot of AI slop. There's a huge number of vulnerabilities that are increasingly being tagged to CVEs that it's even NIST now says they're not going to enrich like all of them. They're going to really focus. So we want to be very careful about that, but we are going to make all of that progress this year. So our risk rubric program, this is something that you have probably seen before, Model Scanner, and we're doing sort of a reboot of that to provide this sort of trust viewpoint of models that are publicly available to look at different agentic areas. And one thing I have here, it's actually live right now, and giving you a link to go out and find it, is a risk rubric claw that will go scan OpenClaw repos and look for how well they've been hardened. And the tool also is something you can download, and you can scan and fix OpenClaw repos. So we're definitely all about seeing what we can do to harden that. Definitely concerns in just turning loose OpenClaw. Personally, I have been using it quite a bit, and it's very much containerized. I just haven't felt comfortable putting that on my MacBook, but I do have it in a container, and I have it doing some very interesting research work. So the telemetry, there's going to be a lot more examples of telemetry we're going to provide, because this risk observatory is really all about this understanding that we can't effectively manage and secure agentic AI and its control plane if we don't have an adequate amount of telemetry logs and the analytics around this. It's not like we need to directly have that, but it's all of the partnerships, and it's our many members who do very important parts of visibility into a lot of the internet's traffic to help us understand what the AI risks are, the vulnerabilities that are being actively exploited, all of those things. So, and then what I would add to this is we're also going to be spending a fair amount of time, not only as we're talking about our focus on CVE and eventually doing a lot of work there with Agentic, but what about all the other sorts of organizations that do information sharing and emergency reporting? So a lot of interesting work there that we're very excited about. So probably the biggest thing that we have been doing in the news has been as part of our CXO Trust for Agentic AI, which we've been making great progress. So we've done 2 emergency CISO sessions, and the first one was OpenClaw, where just with very little notice, we had a lot of people that we were debriefing on this and giving them like probably their first look at what OpenClaw was and initial ideas on policies and tools. And then more recently, when Mythos came out, we had said, hey, we're going to go do the same sort of stand up. But what happened was the most incredible example of cybersecurity volunteers activating, expert mobilization, and a full white paper was written basically on a Saturday and Sunday. And you can go look at it. A lot of you probably already seen it, but it's an iconic list of experts that were involved in that. And you can go reach out to us at CISOs@cloudsecurityalliance.org for more information on this. So there's lots of really interesting things that we are doing here. And this community, we're just so excited how it's grown. Our CISO community is now immense, that getting them very much focused, because the next job for them is truly looking at how we sort of re-architect cybersecurity programs. Part of the findings that we talked about in Mythos is this vulnerability storm and how we're going to deal with that huge amount. And, there's this goal of maybe patching automatically and all those things. But actually, a bigger finding, I think, is that we have to go agentic for productivity, efficiency, keeping up across the whole span of the cybersecurity functions. So thinking incident response, SOC, so many other areas as well. So very excited about like the capabilities here. So a lot of areas in the best practices, and I've talked about this before, and these are just like key areas that we think are critically important, from securing AI, using AI to transform and secure cybersecurity from an agentic perspective. But the things that have happened in here have been moving so quickly. I wanted to highlight a couple things we're actually announcing today. Is there's great best practices out there, and we're never sort of in the mode that we have to invent everything. But we did see 2 like wonderful projects that have been built out there by just smart individuals that were so delighted that they said, hey, we would like to contribute this to CSA and make them part of the CSAI Foundation best practices. So they both have presentations here, so I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail, but the autonomous action runtime management, this is really big. So I think we're seeing there's limitations on how you can expect the model itself, the LLM, to do the security for you. So we not need to understand what the harness is, so many other aspects that drive like what's the intent and what's all of the context so that we know whether we block or allow things. And had some interesting conversations with NVIDIA and understanding what they're doing with this new thing you may not have heard of called Open Shell, and looking at that to be a framework to wrap around and orchestrate and manage like any agents you have on your desktop. And I'm just pointing that out as one example from a very significant company, but I think you're going to see a lot more of this sort of capability and how we think about it. And AARM has done a really good job at creating a specification for this. So the agentic trust framework comes from a person who's been volunteering with us for quite a while, who sort of really nailed this intersection between agentic and zero trust, and has come up with like a really good way, sort of co-opting the different sorts of ways of thinking about this, the who, what, where, why, when, that John Kindervag's made very popular in the zero trust parlance, and sort of adapted that to agentic. And so it's very interesting what we've been able to do there. So credentialing in education, something I think that we found that we really need to accelerate here is CXO education. If we're talking about we are going to reinvent this industry and cybersecurity in the next 12 months, and also specifically agentic, we need to empower cybersecurity professionals to understand how to secure, deploy agents to help the cybersecurity cause. So our STAR program, it's something that we've made a lot of progress, and it's just going to continue to grow. And with this, we're going to continue through the validated sort of portfolio now, create more AI assisted assurance tools. So I want to end here on just talking through some of our, what we're calling this future forward initiatives. This is where we're trying to take an even further look out and see what we can do. So we've had just a great relationship with a philanthropic organization called Coefficient Giving. And for legalese, I got to phrase it in a specific way, but they have supported and are helping us launch our catastrophic risk annex, which is looking at long-term critical issues that are existential threats to humanity from more transformational versions of AI, which feels like we're getting closer and closer to that day than we thought when we were proposing this. So we're very excited. You're going to see that project and a lot of announcements around that in the next couple months, and looking at a formal kickoff in June. So Tay's agent is something I want to talk about just a little bit here with my remaining time. This is something that we've looked at and tested, and I wrote a white paper around this that said I gave my agent PTSD. And what was essentially happening is doing adversarial safety testing, which is like a very common thing. And you can see like actual sort of screenshots that were an example of this. What happened is that once this was done, there was a misalignment with the agent, and I was able to repeat this under lots of different models, different agent platforms, is in fact, it could not revert back to its normal tasks. And the lesson there, and what we're going to try to do with this Tay's agent, is let's think about these as not just technologies and statistical models, but statistical models that do emulate human intelligence and human behaviors. And so maybe we need to think a little more deeply and research more. Maybe there's reinforcement learning we need to do in order to certify some types of agents and make sure they're fit for purpose. So it's pretty exciting. It's something that I'm very interested in thinking about, and combining this with more of our broader sort of governance around agentic systems. Because the thing is, I just believe there's going to be billions and billions of agents fairly soon. They're not all going to get an ISO certification. So what are we going to do to make sure that those digital workers are behaving properly? So that's really what I wanted to present. And if you're thinking about being a founder, we'd love to hear from you, talking to corporations out there who want to govern, advise, connect, and accelerate our mission. So with that, I hope you enjoy those 2 days of deep dives into MCP and CLAW and Mythos, and so many of the things that are really fundamental to where the future of our industry is going. So thank you very much.